Welcome to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. On this podcast, we journey through the devastating experience of the death of a child. Grief is seldom discussed openly in our culture, and the death of a child makes people feel even more uncomfortable. We approach the topic openly and honestly, speaking to people who have lost loved ones and experts who help care for them. Whether you are a parent experiencing loss or someone who wants to support another going through this tragedy, this podcast strives to offer hope and help.
Welcome to episode 100 of Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. I'm Marcy Larson, Andy's mom. Today's episode is very unique and also very special. So in addition to being episode 100, we are just a few days away from the 3-year anniversary of the death of our son, Andy. So because of these two things happening at the same time, we decided to do something different that I've been talking about the last couple of weeks. We did a live stream, and overall it went really well. I think to the point that we will continue to do these, not with Eric, but with Gwen, and fielding some question and answers with Gwen, which I think would be really amazing and helpful. So we did the question and answer on Facebook Live and also on the Always Andy's Mom YouTube channel. I think most people watch from Facebook, but I'm not completely sure of that. So this episode today is just going to be that recording. So we are just going to replay that recording and let you all listen in on what our live question and answer session was like when we recorded it yesterday live. I do want to thank everyone for the great questions that were submitted. Some submitted ahead of time and the majority just during the question and answer session. So thank you so much for that and for being a great audience.
Okay.
All right. Well, this is the live stream. We are seeing how this goes, and hopefully some people will come on. So I guess we'll wait kind of a couple minutes and see if we have anybody watching.
If you're watching, and either through YouTube or through Facebook, go ahead and leave a comment or say where you're from, who you are. It'd be kind of interesting to see that. And the more interaction we get initially, the more people it shows up in their feeds, and then the more people can participate in today's session. So looks like we got 2 eyeballs according to that corner there. So if you've got an eyeball on it, drop your name and where you're from. And it's heart. Ooh, even better.
Ooh, I know. 2 eyeballs and 1 heart.
That's a person, actually. If you're just a couple legs and arms.
That's right. That's right.
Now it's a triclops, so now we don't have a person.
Oh, now we have 3 people watching. So again, if you can post a comment, then we will see kind of who you are and where you're from. And we have like 4 questions that have been asked, so that'll be good to kind of get things going. Oh, Michelle Thorson from Grand Rapids.
Hello, Michelle.
Hello, Michelle.
Well, I think we probably just get started.
Yeah, I'm certainly we can, because this is going to be our podcast that will be kind of distributed tomorrow as well. So, first of all, I just wanted to say I can't believe actually the timing of this. So, this week is the 3-year anniversary of Andy's death, and the whole month, actually, always from the 1st of August, it just gets to be really hard because I feel like everything is a countdown. And I don't know about you. I don't think you do this as much as I do, but I have done this every year, and that I think back, what were we doing this day? What were we doing this day? What were we doing this day? So what we were doing this day, if you don't remember, Eric, because you don't, this day would have been the Saturday before Andy died. Actually, you weren't with us. So we, at the last minute, decided to go up for the weekend and to the cottage. And we spent time with your parents. And we had a really lovely weekend, actually. So it was the 3 of us kids. And then our daughter, Catherine, brought a friend of hers, Erin. And So we were up and we had just a really nice weekend. And I think the other reason it was so nice is because it was just spontaneous and unexpected. And we decided to go up. And then I remember we left on Sunday, and Andy always still had this teddy bear that he loved and he brought with him. And he forgot the teddy bear. And like, Bud, we do not have time. We cannot go back for the teddy bear. And so anyway, that's what we were doing. But those kind of memories end up sort of really haunting me, and that I am always thinking back to those days. So it just was amazing to me that when I started planning this out, because I started looking to see when episode 100 was going to be, probably almost 3 months ago. I wasn't even on 90, and I started just planning it out. And I realized that it was going to be this week. And I thought, wow, we really need to do something different, something special to kind of honor 100 episodes and to honor Andy at the same time. So anyway, that's how the live stream question and answer came to be. Hello, Rhonda. So Rhonda just wrote in. Rhonda is Robbie's mom, and Rhonda was a guest on the show not too terribly long ago. So anyway, we've got 12 people watching now. So again, as we said at the beginning, if you are watching, please post a comment so that we can see where you are and who you're from, and we don't have to say everybody's name, and hopefully we won't be able to say everybody's name because we'll get to be too many people, but we're up to kind of 14 watching now. So anyway, make some comments.
Yep. So drop a comment in the description, just of like or heart or whatever.
And where you're from, and
so yeah. So for me, August. So my memory, I don't know if my memory's bad, but I don't remember usually what I had like to eat. And so I don't remember the specifics of anything except really just the day. And so I don't know where I was the day before that. I just kind of vaguely remember sort of what was going on, with the soccer and stuff. But
well, and I took actually so many pictures, and so those I see because those end up coming back. And then Facebook things like, 3 years ago. So those kind of come back.
Curses for Facebook, as anyone who's lost someone.
No,
You have those Facebook memories photos that come up, and that first year they're the hardest. I
think they're hard all the time.
Yeah, I feel like they're harder. I can look at them now without crying when I see them right away. So I mean, I don't look at them very much now. I do a little bit more than I did, I think, the first 2 years. So maybe that's part of it. You just kind of get to the point where you can now, look at things and it doesn't make you immensely sad, like wailing and stuff, and so now I can look at it and actually have some sweet memories, I guess, kind of like that was a fun time or something, whereas now I can't ever have that time before, right? That's initially that's sort of how you think about things.
Feel like it always was a stab to the heart, and now it just kind of sometimes is, maybe. I don't know, it just depends. Okay, so I do want to welcome some more people that are watching. So we have Carly, who I've talked to before. Carly did not say where you're from. And we have Chrissy from Clarksville, Tennessee. Chrissy's been on the show a few different times. And Chrissy, I want to do a special shout out to her as well, because the anniversary of Caleb's death is actually tomorrow. And so Chrissy and I have been talking on the phone and chatting a lot because it's been a really tough week for both of us. So anyway, keep Chrissy and me in your thoughts and prayers these next few days. We would really appreciate it. So we also have Amanda joining us, Charity from Columbus, Ohio, Michelle, Corbin's mom from Holt, Michigan, another Michelle from Minneapolis, and then, and Rhonda wrote that Robbie's birthday is coming up just on the 26th, and anniversary date is the 31st, so it's going to be really tough. And I know Rhonda has written to me, too, that they're finally able to have that celebration of life coming up, hopefully here in September. So that's a lot. That's a lot going on, for sure.
Why don't we do a question?
Okay, let's do a question. Okay. So we got some questions. and now I need to find them. So the first question I got was, what has someone done that has helped you through your grief? Do you want to take that one first?
Yeah, I think for me, I had a friend, Ben, who would just go on walks with me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's actually a counselor, and so
he's a therapist. So
I don't know if
people always ask me, "Is your husband in therapy?" And I would say, "Well, not officially,
right."
But his friend Ben takes him on walks that I'm pretty sure are therapy sessions.
Yeah. So that was really helpful. I think I think especially I was listening to something today. It's really hard for men, I think, to have close friends in today's society. I don't think we have many, and so I think you can become very isolated, and you rely on other people to help you. Because I can't rely on Marcy because you're going through the same thing, and so it was helpful to have someone who just talked to about stuff and how just life sucks and things are tough and then we talked about other stuff too, which is what you don't want to just talk about the death of your son so that was super helpful. I think just having someone who's just around and just talking and it wasn't therapy. I mean, I guess it probably was like I don't think it was like sneaky therapy, but I think it was just, that's what therapy is, right? You just go and talk to someone, and so just having someone you can talk to, and so that it's just hard as a man, I think, especially as an introverted man, that you just don't have a ton of friends, and so it's helpful having someone to just spend time with, and it probably helped me getting out of the house from you too, so you have some time for yourself.
Yeah, and I always felt good if you're going on a walk with Ben. I always would feel like, okay, good, because I felt a little less pressure, because sometimes I think, as the mom and as the wife, you feel this need that you need to care for everyone, right? I'm supposed to take care of the kids. I'm supposed to take care of my husband. And when I knew you were doing that walk with Ben, I felt like, okay, Ben's taking care of him today, and almost for the next couple days, I feel like I don't need to worry about taking care of you, because I knew Ben sort of was. And so that was really helpful.
So that helped both of us.
So it did help both of us.
Yeah.
So I actually had 4 really specific people that I thought that did 4 very different things for me. And so I wanted to share all of those, and I actually got permission from all 4 of them to share. So, and that was in the first days of grief. And I feel like different people have different talents and skills and do different things for you. So, first of all, the night of the accident, we obviously we were taken to the hospital, and 3 of these women were there. Like, they came immediately and were there with me. And I'm going to start out by my friend Michelle, who was the first one to log in here. So, little shout out to Michelle. So, Michelle was one of my first calls. That we were there. It was supposed to be an office party, and she actually works for my office, so she should have been there, but wasn't. So when I couldn't get a hold of her, people from the office were frantically calling her too, that this horrible accident had happened and she needed to talk to me. So she was there, and like, I was in the ER, and they were checking me out and literally cutting my clothes off of me, and Michelle was there holding my hand, and she held my hand until I had to go in that CT scanner, and when I felt like I couldn't breathe and I just wasn't going to be able to go on, she was right there. And when things needed to be done, when we needed to plan a funeral, and we needed to get food for the family, and we needed to figure out who was sending all of the stuff, she just took over. And my family, my extended family, my sister-in-law, all my relatives so appreciated her, because here she comes with a clipboard of write down the name of the person, write down what they brought, write down all of this stuff. And then she went to Costco and printed all of these thank you notes that I wouldn't have to do that. She just took over. So it was just tremendous. She also was the one to talk to the police. And she's the one that was our media spokesperson, that would talk to the media and was kind of that filter for us. So she was huge in those first days. Then the next person I want to talk about is my friend Kara, because my friend Kara, she was there to really just weep with me when I needed someone to weep with me. She was just right there beside me, crying with me. And sometimes that's what you need, actually. You just need someone to sit and cry with you. And when I would lament, like really cry, she would just be there with me. And that was just so special to me. And then in those days and weeks afterwards, when I needed to do something because I wasn't at work, she would take me out and take me to go play pickleball, which I've never done before, and all of these things. And I'd start crying during pickleball, and she'd be totally okay with it. And she'd just like take me out and do things. And so that was huge. And then my friend Carrie was along the same lines, and Carrie and I didn't do a ton together beforehand, but Carrie's mother had died, and she just felt more, I think, comfortable being around death in some ways. And, you know, there were always a lot of people that would say, you know, call me if you need something, call me if you need something. And I would like shut the door and think to myself, I'm never going to call you. I'm never going to call you. And there were days when I didn't want to get out of bed and I was just so sad. And Carrie would just show up at my door and ring the doorbell and make me go on a walk. And I needed someone to make me go on a walk. So there was one day that the doorbell rang and I'm upstairs and I'm thinking, I'm not going to answer it. I'm just not going to answer it. And then it rang again and I went downstairs and I answered the door and it was Carrie and she said, it's time to go on a walk. We need to go on a walk. And I'm like, I said, okay. I wasn't going to answer the door. And she said, well, you don't understand because I wasn't going to leave. And so she just was going to be there to push me to just be there. And I needed that. And I needed someone to say, I'm not going to go away and I'm just going to keep on the phone with you or I'm going to keep showing up at your door and doing stuff. And then the last person I wanted to talk about was my friend Tina. So Tina also was there the night of the accident. And she is a very high up in the hospital system. She's like a tremendous, powerful person. And she just was there. And the day that after the accident, we had to decide on where we were going to do this funeral. And we didn't know we knew we wanted to have the funeral at our church, but our church was undergoing construction, and so we couldn't do a reception afterwards, and the pastor's like, we can talk to other churches, I don't know what to do. And Tina said, we should have it at Meyer Gardens. And I was like, that's going to cost a lot of money, because Meyer Gardens here in Grand Rapids, it's beautiful. I mean, people have weddings there, but like rich people have weddings there. It is not a cheap place to rent out. And she said, you let me worry about that. And we had the most beautiful reception, and I never saw Bill. She just took care of everything. And every day in those first days after work, where she had this very powerful job, she would just show up at my door. Just show up. And when I needed to write the obituary, she sat there beside me and wrote the obituary. And her quiet strength, because that's what she was. She didn't talk a lot. She just had this quiet strength. And sometimes you need somebody around you that's just strong, that you can just rely on their strength. And that was her to me. When I felt like when I need somebody really strong, who might tear up a little bit, but isn't going to be the one to cry with me, that's when I needed Tina. So it just, each one of them did something so special, and I just wanted to honor them and then talk about the importance of having different people in your life to do different roles, and knowing that one person can't do it all and doesn't have to do it all. And it's beautiful, I think, to have different people do different things for you, and that you don't burn out somebody either and make them kind of do too much. So anyway, that was a really long answer, and I apologize for all that, but I do feel like it was important to kind of go through all of it.
Yeah. I think, the that just points to the fact that we all have different gifts, and
Right.
you work on your strengths and whatever it might be if you're trying to help someone, and to try not to do things that you can't do. I mean, you can always go outside your comfort zone and to try and do some new things, and you may be stronger than you think, but you shouldn't feel like you're a failure if you can't do certain things. So I think it's important, and I think when you look at this podcast, when it comes to Marcy, her strength is, well, she likes to talk, and because she's a pediatrician, that's what she does. She helps take care of people and families, and this is really an extension of what she does as a job. And she was doing this kind of before you even were working. I mean, you kind of, I think, started this.
Oh, the podcast?
The podcast.
Before I went back to work,
Before we went back to work. Mm-hmm. And so it has been a healing thing for you. And I know, I mean, I've read a lot of these emails. It's amazing community of people who've been helped by this. And it's been an honor to really to be a part of this. I haven't done a whole lot except just encourage you in general. But we set up the Andy's Mom, or the Always Andy's Mom nonprofit site, so that you can do more stuff. And so, she's not very good at asking for help, whether after Andy or even now, right? And so I think it's important, if you find this helpful, and this is I'm the treasurer, I guess, of our organization.
Yeah.
So
he's the treasurer. And what's funny is that he tells me, well, because now I did hire someone to help me with my social media, and I hired someone to help me with my editing, so I don't have to do everything because it was getting to be a lot. So I was getting some help. So he's the treasurer who sends money out every month, and he will say to me, "Did you ask for money? You should ask for money because people will want to donate money," and I don't really want to do that. And it's very ironic that I'm doing this today because yesterday I was on a different podcast. I was interviewed on another podcast, and I will post that later when it's going to be released. But I started talking to him about the fact that I am bad about wanting to ask for money. And he runs a nonprofit himself, and he said, yeah, I was really bad at that too. And he said a few years ago, this nonprofit would bring in money, and he had this person that would send $50,000 every single year. He would send $50,000. And one year, the $50,000 check didn't come. And he said to his friend, wow, I'm really disappointed. This $50,000 hasn't come. And he said, well, did you ask? And he said, well, no, I didn't ask. I'm not going to ask. And he said, well, isn't your mission worth it? And he told me that, and I started to cry because I thought, wow, do I not think my mission is worth it? Because of course I think my mission is worth it. Of course I think it's worth it to reach out to people and to help people. And I thought, that's really not honoring of the whole thing to act like it's not worth people, send in a donation or send in some money. And anyway, it really was very powerful to me. And Eric was going to come on, and he was, well, and he still can kind of give a little pitch, but I kind of thought to myself, it's worth it. It's worth it to do it, right?
I can just say, for one thing, I mean, we don't, the money goes towards just every penny goes towards the production, the promotion of the show. And so it goes towards the things that Marcy was doing that she doesn't need to do, like posting these on social media. We've got someone who does a great job, fantastic job with that, and it's been
and it used to stress me out, honestly.
And it's great. And then also, someone who edits a show, which it's not super expensive. We found someone who does it and who's been felt very blessed to be part of this process as well.
Well, and both of them actually do it pretty inexpensively.
But that frees up Marcy not only for the time so that she can focus answering emails and those sorts of things, but also. It really helps the fact that she just can get away from, caring for people a little bit in some sense for those 3-4 hours when you're editing, because it would take a long time, and it doesn't become so overwhelming, the whole podcast process. And so that's been probably the best part of it for you, in that it just lets you focus on, yourself.
On what I like too, and not the social media, which really did stress me out,
Sure, yeah,
to be
is that.
Well, and someone Michelle just wrote, don't forget to promote Amazon Smile, and that is totally true, because that is an easy way. I mean, think about how much stuff people buy on Amazon now. If you type in smile.amazon.com instead of just amazon.com, they will ask you what charity you want to promote, and if you put in Always Andy's Mom, then I think we get like 0.5% or something.
Yeah,
we get like a little amount, and it doesn't actually take anything away from you, and it's just an easy thing to be able to do. So
anyway, then so if you want to support the show, you can obviously go there. You can go to the website, and you can just make a PayPal donation, and that's really the only pitch, I think, for the show. But I think it'd be nice for people to realize that they can do those things to support you and what you're doing. And I think there's some things we want to do, and reach out to more children's hospitals maybe, and their bereavement units, and to because that's already at Toronto, the sick kids, and then also at St. Jude, you said, in Memphis. And so we'd like more people to have access to this.
And actually, if people are listening either live or later, and they know of somebody that runs bereavement at a children's hospital, or they have some sort of connection, please let me know, because I would really like to be able to reach out to others.
Okay.
So I wanted to do a couple more
questions.
of these comments. No, I'm going to do some comments. So
I guess you're in charge, so go ahead.
I am in charge. So Carly wrote also to be grateful for the Facebook memories, because she said her Facebook was hacked a month after her son died, and everything she ever posted about him was gone. So, wow. You think it's hard to see him, but it would be harder not to see him in some ways.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, and Amanda wrote, hello, thanks for sharing. And her son, B, she was on the show, would be his 16th birthday on Saturday. So she is joining us from Florida right now. And then Joni says, thank you for being here. Joni's Martin's mom. Joni's from New Mexico. And I'm going down. And Gwen is on. So Gwen wrote, congrats on episode 100. So she's coming to us from Grief Guide. Charity, I think I already said, Charity's son was killed in a car accident in January. Cameron, forever 26. And Vicky is writing to us. Shalise is writing to us too. Shalise is my cousin's wife, so that's exciting.
So also, and to Gwen, thanks so much. What a gift you've been to Marcy and to our family and to the podcast and all the people who listen. I think your episodes. So I don't listen to every episode. I try to, but I get behind. But I find I really do learn things from everyone who has their show. Their stories. It's a way for me to not only learn something, but also kind of check in to see how Marcy's doing. So it's been good that way for me too.
Okay, so next question. Is there anything that you feel helped your children heal while going through the tremendous loss of their beautiful brother?
Yeah, I think, it's similar to the adults. So I think, for us, and maybe this is similar to most families, it's really hard to provide any comfort to your kids when you're going through this. I mean, you're grieving with them. You feel bad for them that they've lost their sibling, but you don't really have a whole lot to offer them, except you can hang out with me, but I'm really sad all the time. So I think, when people just took them and just did things with them, especially Peter had a little bit, I think, more friends who just kind of said, hey, can we take Pete for the day or whatever? And that was, I think this is very helpful. I mean, I think that was probably the most helpful thing, just to get them away from a place where people are sad all the time.
And what's funny is it's still a little bit that way. He was going to hang out with his friend, and I said, well, he can come here. He'd just rather go there. And even though I don't feel like we're at like a sad household anymore, he still does like, I think, going out and being in other places.
Well, and he deals with the memories of his brother doing stuff with him here, right?
Yeah,
so every time he does stuff here?
I would think in some ways it maybe still is a little bit hard to be in that basement and playing with somebody who's not his brother. I don't know. Certainly, I think we put the kids in individual therapy, and then we also did some stuff as a family. So I think all of that was helpful. And certainly some more than others. So like Catherine really enjoyed going to Starlight Ministries with us, especially when she had a friend that she really felt close to that went as well. So that was super helpful to do that kind of as a family. But yet Peter really did not like it at all. At all. And I think a lot of it was he just didn't have any guys that he felt he related to. So for him, just doing that individual one-on-one therapy was much more important. And it was funny because his therapist said, I think he's good. I don't really think he needs to come. And then I brought that up, like, he's wondering if you need to come, and he was like, yeah, I still need to go. So he felt like he really needed that. I think he needed that time that he knew he could talk to someone who he wasn't going to make sad, because that's the thing. I think our kids want to protect us so much that a lot of times they're not completely honest with us and what they're going through. And so, like you said, having people from the outside that want to see them, or having a therapist that they can work with is, anyway, I think that's really important.
Yep.
Okay, so next question is, have you ever had any moments of clarity during a grief therapy session that you feel helped a lot? You gonna take that? You want me to start?
Why don't you start this time?
I will start. So a couple things. One, when we were at Starlight Ministries, there was a group of sessions, 6 sessions, that were focused on lament. And that was so extremely powerful to me, to really learn about lament and what it is to lament and to truly mourn. Because I remember having this just huge aha moment that... Was that lightning? I hope
That's an airplane.
I think it's an airplane. Okay, we're good.
What happens if you live next to the airport?
So, anyway, I had this aha moment that I had always called it the bad cry. I would say, oh, it's the bad cry. I'm having the bad cry. It sounds a lot better to say that I am just showing lament and really, truly mourning. And that when you're bereaved and you're mourning, it's like you're being torn asunder. And because that's exactly what it feels like, that you're being ripped completely apart. And to have those terms really explained to me, it really normalized it. Like, lament is normal and good and has gone on throughout the ages. And when you are mourning and bereaving someone, you are being just ripped apart, and that is completely normal. So you don't feel like you're doing something that's abnormal. Anyway, normalizing that was big for me.
Yeah, and for me, I think, one of the things was recognizing that people survive, and that I'm not the only one who's gone through this. It's not a happy thought to think that other people have gone through the same sort of process, having their child die. But knowing that people survive and they get through, it's not fun. It's not something you'd ever want to do, but that you can come out the other end and, get through it. The other is one thing that struck me after just a couple weeks of our session, our group, was that we spent a lot of time with, other parents obviously, but they had kids who died and who were adults, and people who died, and ones who died as a baby, and then a couple teenagers, and it was initially you just recognize the differences between everyone. Like they had grandkids, and it was a totally different situation with an adult child, and you're jealous because you're like, wouldn't it be great to see my kid if he was 25, 30 years old and had a family, and you lose them, but at least you had some time with them, versus somebody who's lost a baby, right? And then, at some point you realize that it's all kind of the same, and that it's different. Obviously, every life's unique, and your experiences are different. But recognize that there is a common sort of thread for everybody, and that yeah, we're different, but the loss is probably just as intense. And so I don't know. I mean, that was I think the thing I learned the most. It was most surprised by, certainly, but that's a really big club. And then and I just had a patient today who I talked to who lost her daughter in child labor 8 months ago, and so we talked about that actually, and that's something also I never would have done. I mean, 5 years ago, I never would have started talking to someone about the fact that they lost a child or something before going back to the operating room. So that was definitely different for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think too that you just have more in common than you do that isn't. And that was surprising because all of us as bereaved parents have so much in common no matter what the circumstances, and they can be completely and totally different, but there are so many things that are just the same. So let's see, I'm going to go through another couple comments. So, another Michelle. Wow, we have a lot of Michelles watching. So just saying, with God's grace, the mission of yours and Andy's will grow. Thank you for your honesty. And Carolyn, just saying thank you. Also, if you have questions, please post them now, because I have one more question to talk about before we have to start just talking about other things.
Just winging it, huh? Okay.
Then we'll have to start winging it. So please ask questions. If you have any questions to ask them now. So
I have something to wing, by the way.
Oh, good. So the next question is, we sort of have addressed this a little bit, but do you feel getting grief therapy as a couple has helped if you've done this?
Well, I guess we didn't do it as a couple. We did a group as a couple.
Yes.
Because we tried it once as a couple, and it was weird.
Oh yeah, that
just was one of those things where it just didn't work. The therapist was not the right person or whatever. I don't know. But
yeah, it was one-on-one therapy just as a couple. It was odd. I remember it was right away though. So Andy died on a Wednesday, and I feel like it was like that Friday. Because so my office, great office. Obviously, they were all there for us right away, and the one of our care coordinators lined up that Friday. So Andy died Wednesday night at 7 p.m. By Friday, Eric and I had a couples therapy appointment. My daughter Catherine had a therapy appointment. My son Peter had a therapy appointment, and she even made one for my foster son Valeriano, who decided he was not going to a therapy appointment. So but the rest of us all went. But this woman, she was like crouched down the whole time. It was just odd.
It was just different.
And I think we were honestly kind of too soon. Don't you think?
Yeah.
Like, we were in shock. I didn't even know what was going on. It was just too soon. So it may have worked had it been a little bit later. But then we definitely did the couples group, the support group. And that was huge for us to do it together.
Yeah. There's actually a question from another Michelle, or maybe this is one who's been on there before, asking about how to reach children's hospitals. I think, if you've been through the Children's Hospital network, like, your kid was there and you dealt with it, there's probably a grief coordinator or someone. I think we just reach out to them and just have them, either you can get the information for us to reach out to them to talk to them about the show, to offer it as a resource for parents,
mm-hmm.
or they can have them contact Marcy just through the
when email. I think the question might be more about how we have done that so far. And so far...
we haven't.
Well, no, that's not true. So at DeVos Children's Hospital here in town, I actually work with them a fair amount. Right, yeah. So, they wanted to do something for Mother's Day, so they designed, I thought bookmarks would be a good thing. I said, everybody gives you books. We get all sorts of books. Sometimes you read them, sometimes you don't. But, yeah, see, that she's clarifying. How do you serve them? Right. So I helped with doing a bookmark, and that they sent out to all the moms. And and what they wanted from me now, she just sent an email asking for a little card that we could hand out to say kind of what we do. The other thing that I personally am wanting to do with Children's Hospital is I am wanting to talk to staff and to the doctors and nurses so that they can get more comfortable talking with bereaved families and families of children who are dying. So that is something that I'm doing. Gwen and I are working on putting together a program actually that we're going to do for physicians and nurses and just staff at the hospital. So that's something that I want to expand. So obviously I've got my kind of the Always Annie's Mom focuses on parents, but I am a pediatrician too. And I feel like I got really cruddy instruction on what to do. And I've said this before, that all the times that I dealt with grieving families, there was one time that I thought I really messed up and I really did everything wrong. That is definitely thunder. That I thought I did everything wrong, and that was the only time I did everything right. And that was when I showed a little bit of more of my humanity, and I really truly let that family know that their child mattered to me and that I was going to miss them. And I didn't just have this, this face of seriousness and all business, and I let them see a little bit of what mattered. And I think that's important to be able to tell people that that's okay, and that you don't always have to try to make someone feel better. That a lot of times the best thing to do is to just sit beside someone and know that you're not going to fix it, and be okay not fixing it. So that's one area that I want to focus on. And I've been talking to Sick Kids Children's Hospital, to their bereavement coordinator, a little bit about that, but also just about getting that information out. And so just telling newly bereaved parents about the podcast, that there are resources to be able to just hear from other bereaved parents, so they know that they're not going crazy. So it's kind of a twofold mission as far as children's hospitals go.
So 2 good questions. I don't know which one you want to just go in order. How differently
Sure.
did you and Eric grieve?
How differently did we grieve?
Different.
Really differently, yeah.
Still.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Marcy is much more, her emotions are on her sleeve,
Yeah.
She wears them a lot more better than I do.
Well, just more. I mean, there's not
Yeah.
one that's better and the one that's worse, but we're just very, very different. I'm much more of an emotional person. And you're not. And I think back to just in those early weeks, I've got to get back to work. I've got to do something. And then that was really helpful to you. And so then you kind of assumed that would be helpful to me, or I hoped that would be helpful to me, and encouraged me to go back. And then it was sort of a disaster, and it didn't go well at all. So then, so that is just one piece of evidence on how something that really helped him really didn't help me.
Yeah. It's just, I think you just have to see what works.
Different.
Yeah.
And I know I've talked to lots of other moms, especially. I've talked to moms, and their husbands grieve so much differently. Like, I just think about someone I talked to recently, and she said, our daughter died, and it was a few days later, and he wanted to go to a movie. Like, I couldn't go to a movie, but he just wanted to do something that felt a tiny bit normal. So, like, let's just go to a movie or something. And not one's not right and one's not wrong. It's just totally different.
Yeah. So the next good question from Rhonda is, how long did it take you to laugh again? And this is something that really, if there's one emotion I did not expect, it was fear. And I think the biggest one I had was I was just fear of ever being normal and ever being, I kind of joke around a lot, and that's just sort of who I am. And, whether it's dad jokes or actually funny jokes. And that was something I thought, especially those first few months, I thought, I'm just never going to be happy enough or be able to smile. It was just hard. And then even when you do smile or laugh or something's funny, you immediately feel guilty about it. You're like, I'm not supposed to be happy. I'm really sad, so why am I laughing, right? And at some point, it just kind of happens. You get better at. I think it's like anything, just with time and just kind of working through it and accepting it, you just kind of get to a point where you can kind of laugh again. And I would say we're almost 3 years now, and I was just thinking the other day as I was at work, I was having a really good day at work, and I was joking around with everybody and the nurses and stuff, and I thought to myself, this is kind of how I felt like I was 3.5, 4 years ago, but only like recently do I feel like I'm back, so to speak. And even then I start thinking about it, and then I'm not anymore, right? So, it's a long time, but it's not that long. I mean, you just kind of just work your way sort of back into.
I think it totally depends on who you're with, too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, we found that we went to that grief support group, and we would sort of laugh. And we even had...
Start getting stuff.
I think it's going to start to rain on us, so I did not expect this to happen. But so anyway, we would laugh like there, and I almost felt more comfortable laughing with other bereaved people, because when I laughed with people who weren't bereaved, I always felt like they were going to judge me, right? Why is she laughing? Does that mean she's okay now? It was kind of funny, but I knew that as if I was with other bereaved parents and I was laughing, they knew that did not mean that I was suddenly okay. So it felt more normal to laugh. Like we did a game night with 2 other bereaved couples, and it was awesome. We had a great time, and we laughed a lot. And just, anyway, that, I think a lot of it has to do with where you are and this feeling of who you're comfortable with and what they'll maybe think of you. Okay, I think we're okay out here for a little bit. We'll see if it really starts to rain on us. And we've got this little umbrella that we can move.
When it rains on us.
Yeah. When it rains on us. When it rains on us.
Those aren't airplanes anymore.
Okay, so let's see.
I just also want to say, for those who've lost their kids recently, I know people, this has been a really tough 1.5 years. I mean, I think it was hard for us just with the pandemic and the anxiety and the fear and all that sort of thing, and not able to see people. I can only imagine what it's like to try and go through this now. I mean, the whole time been thinking about how hard it is for people who've gone through this sort of tragedy, which, never would have thought of 5 years ago that something happened. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so my heart goes out to you, and just, it just makes the struggle even harder, so I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, next question on here is, have you changed your beliefs in the afterlife after Andy's passing? What would you say to that? I feel like it's, for me, not really.
No, I don't think a whole lot.
I mean, yeah, I think so. Back, and I know we've told this story so many times, so probably everyone knows this story about Andy, and that when Andy was 7, he drew this big family picture, and it was big, beautiful picture with the sun in the corner and a big tree and our family. But our family was not a family of 5. It was a family of 4. Eric's moving our umbrella, so this hopefully will be better when it starts to rain. So it wasn't our whole family. It was a family of 4. And I asked him as soon as I looked at the picture, like, Andy, why do you have 4 people in the picture and not 5 people in the picture? And he said, well, Mom, I'm not going to grow up all the way. I'm going to be in heaven. And I immediately just thought, that can't be. I don't want this to happen. You can see as it's getting much darker on us that the rain is coming. But anyway, a little bit of me, though, really feared that was true and really thought that could be true. And so even the night of the accident, one of the first things Eric and I said to each other when we were alone is, remember the picture. And to have that, it was just beautiful that we did have that little moment to be able to see kind of Andy's vision of that he was going to be in heaven and he was going to be okay with it. And so I do think of that in that sort of way. But I guess the only thing that has changed is I so often talk to other bereaved parents, and we talk about our kids in heaven talking to each other, and that I don't think I thought of quite as much as I do now, for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But it certainly, your faith is affected. I tell people my faith was kind of rocked to the core when I lost Andy, but it never really went away. I felt like I certainly fought with God a bit. I was angry with God a bit, but I kept thinking to myself, as long as I was still feeling anger towards God, I was still in relationship with God, so things were still kind of okay. All right, so what is the mission of... Oh, no.
Yeah.
The next one is, outside of Compassionate Friends, is
Oh.
there a non-religious grief group you know of for younger child loss? And the answer to that, unfortunately, is no. I don't know of
we
any.
have some locally, but I'm sure there's some local groups
Oh,
as
local.
well, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. What is that one?
Gilda's?
No, Gilda's Club. Yeah, is more for
Gilda's Club.
cancer, though. Oh, there is another local one, and now I can't remember. But I think you have to just look kind of locally, because there is one here that's non-religious, that's local. Then the next thing is, what is the mission of the nonprofit? Is it more than supporting the podcast?
And I'd say it is, but I think more broadly it's supporting Marcy's work, which includes the podcast. But again, like, we're trying to get her to, COVID's thrown everything off, right? But it was to try and get interact with physicians and medical personnel so they can understand, like you mentioned, going to hospitals and talking to the staff about how to deal with grief, to help those hospitals in their bereavement outreach, and sort of helping people the next step for parents.
I would love, I mean, if we could, I mean, right now we don't have anyone really supporting the whole nonprofit at all except for us, so it has been more focused on the podcast, but I would love to be able to expand it out
and retreats,
and my biggest thing, my real dream, is to do retreats, and we do have a camp that we've been affiliated with that Andy just loved, and I've talked a little bit to them about doing some parent retreats, and I would love, I mean, that's the dream, honestly. That's the dream, to be able to really do that and to be able to spread that out into more areas.
And obviously COVID's caused any
so
chance
much,
of doing something like that is kind of on the back burner until this sort of clears up, I guess.
And then just to be able to help people in their own little things. So I know Gwen has worked with a little group from Chicago that actually started by just being a group of people that listen to my podcast, and now they're doing more, and they're gathering together, and I think they do quilting and they do other things. And so if those little groups kind of pop up, and I have the ability to be able to help them with a little funding to do stuff, I would love to be able to do that, for sure. Oh, okay. You know what? Gwen just answered a question. So to help answer Courtney's question, you can go to the website of the National Alliance of Grieving Children, and under Find Support, you locate your state, and then it views the list of groups there and see if there are any in your area. And she says most of those groups actually are non-religious groups. So thank you, Gwen, for that little insight.
Always Gwen.
Always Gwen, giving the answers to those things.
So I'll answer a question which wasn't asked.
Okay.
So, like, people ask me sometimes, what books I read, and the answer is I didn't. But that's not entirely true. I did read a couple.
You didn't.
I read I read one that I can't remember the name of it, but it was a book. It was like basically a kid's book, sort of, about some women making soup.
Yeah. That was sent to us by the woman who eventually became my therapist.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So
I don't know if you knew that, but yeah.
So anyway, so that was really good. It was easy to read. I mean, obviously. I read a book, the one book we got 7 copies of, which I can't remember the name of right now.
Lament for a Son.
Lament for a Son, which is a fantastic book. And there are a lot of things in there that I think were helpful to me as a man, I think, father going through this. And then the other book was really helpful to me, which I've had a number of people ask me about when I talk about things in the OR and stuff, but it's called The Art of Forgiveness by Smead, S-M-E-D-E. He's passed away. He's a pastor for many years, I think, in West Michigan somewhere, but he wrote 2 books. One was about what is forgiveness, and the other one was called The Art of Forgiveness. And even if you're not a religious person, in fact, you don't have to be to get a lot out of the book, it just talks about dealing with anger and forgiveness of the situation, because probably in the story somewhere of your child, there's probably someone who's at fault, or there's some sort of thing that happened. Maybe you're angry, something.
Well, and you're angry about the situation, if
maybe
nothing else.
Maybe the situation,
but,
your spouse.
I mean, we
someone.
had someone that physically, ran into us and killed our son, so that was a person that we could put anger onto. But,
and it was actually, strangely enough, it was my accountant who gave me the book, and he said he found it very helpful when he would talk to couples, because he deals with people in tremendous stress, which you don't think of with an accountant, but when it's financial problems with either marriage breaking up or a death of someone in the family or a business falling apart, right? And so he's like, forgiveness is one of those things that's really important, and it helped me a lot. I didn't have as many problems with anger as Marcy did, but I know it helped you quite a bit. And I recommend it for anyone. It's super short. It's easy to read. And I think it just gives you a little bit more insight of what forgiveness is and how important it is for you dealing with anger. If that's something that you feel like you're struggling with, I think that was a great book. Again, Smead, I think it's Art Smead, Smede, called The Art of Forgiveness.
Yeah, well, you were right in that. That was one of the most important things I did, finally, is when I was able to truly forgive and not hold that anger anymore. That's when I felt like I could start to heal a little bit more. So, okay, next question is, have either of you or your kids tried EMDR therapy? My friends who have dealt with trauma in their families struggle with anxiety. I did. And I have to say, so 2 things. 1, it really helped me.
Why didn't you say what it is? Because that wouldn't mean anything to me.
I will. 2, I hated it when I had to do it. Okay, so I'm going to put both of those things out. So EMDR therapy is a type of therapy where they actually kind of bring you back to the traumatic event to try to have less of that negative sort of panic and body feelings that you go through when you're having it. And it's actually, you have these alternating eye movements or alternating sounds, and so they are trying to trigger a certain part of your brain to be able to dissociate from that. So for example, after the car accident, it's interesting because I have no recollection of the first probably 20 to 30 minutes after the car accident. I don't remember the crash. I don't remember any of the ambulances, fire trucks coming, none of that. When I came to, they were all there. And I think we counted during the police report, there were like 7 ambulances there. I think there were at least 3 fire trucks. There were a lot of emergency vehicles there. A lot. But in those weeks afterwards, anytime I heard a siren for a fire truck or an ambulance, I couldn't breathe. I started to feel these palpitations. I get this tightness. It was terrifying to me. And I don't even remember that happening, yet it was awful. So that EMDR was crucial for me to be able to do so I could do that again. I mean, getting in a car was so difficult for me. So seeing families with 3 children was difficult for me. So all of those things that would trigger me, she was just trying to bring me back and be able to dissociate those things. Now, that also being said, our daughter just started doing EMDR now. So now we're 3 years later. And what's interesting is, I mean, we both feel very terrible about this, is that we sort of felt like she wasn't in the car. Like, how is she going to have this tremendous trauma compared to the rest of us when she wasn't in the car? But there was so much that she did experience and so much trauma she did experience. And when you think about it, like, she was a teenager and she was alone and she found out this horrible accident had happened, and then someone came to the door to have to tell her that her brother had died. This is horrible trauma to have to go through. And so just now in the last weeks, she's doing EMDR, and we feel like we're already seeing a little bit lighter version of her. So like some of that, she would just be so anxious and kind of twitchy and things like that, that we're already seeing that start to go down a little bit through the EMDR. So I can't say enough good about it, but I mean, on the days that I was supposed to do EMDR with my therapist, I would go in and she'd say, is there anything you want to talk about before we do EMDR? And I would come up with every excuse under the sun on things that I felt were more important to talk about than that EMDR, because it was hard to do. But doing it did tremendous good. So even though it's hard, I would recommend it 100%.
This is so authentic with the thunder and lightning.
Yeah. I can't believe we're in the thunderstorm. I really did not. It was so sunny when we started.
She has, and I think she would agree also that she thinks it sucks, but she also thinks it's been helpful. So,
right.
And then Michelle mentioned that the name of that organization that Gwen mentioned is now the National Alliance for Children's Grief. So if you're looking for something,
so
there you
that
go.
It sounds like the name changed, National Alliance for Children's Grief, but it should still offer the same thing.
Well, I just want to say thanks to all of you who are part of this community, which is not one we want to be a part of. But it's been really tremendously helpful to me just to see your stories and listen to them and to see how much Marcy's helping. I mean, I think that's why we do this, to try and help people. So.
Well, and I have one more kind of closing thing. Sorry. I wanted to ask one more question. And so we are thinking about, Gwen and I are thinking about doing this more regularly, doing this as a Q&A, some of our sessions together, and having people ask Gwen and I questions directly. And I don't know if we do it in the evening or the afternoon or what time of the day, but I just, from the people who are still watching, want to know if that would be helpful, if they think that's something they would like. If you're listening to this later on the podcast, when it's released tomorrow on the podcast, just write to me at marcy@andysmom.com or message through Facebook or Instagram at alwaysandysmom. If you could let me know if that's something that you think might be helpful and interesting, because Gwen and I certainly are thinking about kind of going that direction. And maybe still we'd have a subject that we were planning on talking about, but just opening things up a little more to Q&A.
Well, if we ever needed a better way to have to stop the show, I think the thunderstorm that is maybe 1 minute away from pouring on
and
us.
It is now raining. We are under cover of umbrellas, so we're not getting wet yet, but I think it's going to get worse soon. I know my social media guy is going to want me to stay under an hour, because if we are under an hour, then he can post this directly to Instagram tomorrow. So we are at close to 59 minutes.
Yep.
So I would love that.
1 hour, sitting under an umbrella during a lightning storm, it may not be the best idea. So,
So I do have, great. I've had 3 people write that they think that the Q&A with Gwen would be awesome. So keep letting me know. And last, the live videos would be very welcomed and helpful. So I think that sounds like maybe that's going to be a good idea. So we're thinking maybe next month sometime, Gwen and I will do one of these together. All right. So thank you so much for logging in and watching us today as the thunderstorm's coming through. Take care.
thanks for listening to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. Please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player. We are always looking for new show ideas. If you'd like to be a guest, know someone who'd be a great guest, or have a show idea, please email us at marcy@andysmom.com. Be sure to visit the webpage, andysmom.com, for more content, including Marcy's blog. There you can also sign up to receive updates via email. Together, let's work to inspire hope, one day at a time.